I am the tax man here on AM560 the Answer. This is the IRS radio hour, which makes me the tax man. I'm here with our technical producer, Deborah Schreiner, my co-host, Jim Leahy, and you, the listener.
And now, here's that man with a head just crammed full of knowledge, Mr. Know-It-All.
The segment where attorney Stephen Leahy gives us his infinite wisdom on all things taxes. And the question this week is, hey, tax man, you've been helping people with IRS problems for a long time. What's the biggest mistake that people make?
Well, that's a good question.
That came in from a listener.
That's a good question, Jim. And it is true that I have been doing this a long time, and I've seen a lot of people make these mistakes. And I want to help you avoid these mistakes. And here's the biggest mistake that people make. They stop filing their tax return. Okay? Always, always, always file your tax return on time if you can. But if you can't, then file an extension. Even if you can't pay, file the tax return. We talked earlier in the show about the statute, how long they can go back at you when the statute starts. It doesn't start if I don't pay, right? I mean, if I don't file my tax return, the 10-year statute of limitations never starts. And so I'm just giving the IRS more time to come after me. And what will happen is later, if I don't file my tax return, the IRS will file one for me, and it'll be some years later. And these are called the SFRs, substitute for returns. And they'll come after you for it. But that will be some years after it. You know, they'll give them 2 or 3 more years to come after you because the statute will now be longer. So if I file on time, that statute of limitations begins, and I know that they'll only be able to collect for 10 years from that date of assessment. And the date of assessment will be the date that I file, actually the date that it's due. So as long as I file on time, it's going to be the due date of my tax return. And that's important. That's the biggest mistake people make, is that they owe the IRS, and then so they don't file their tax return, or they just get lazy and they don't file their tax return. You can have someone else file your do your taxes for you. And I understand sometimes it's the bookkeeping and everything that gets in the way. But you should always file your tax return on time. That's the biggest mistake. So avoid the mistake by just getting your tax return filed. And now we're in tax time. This is the tax season started January 27th, so just a couple of days ago. You have until April 15th to file your tax return, or to file an extension if you file an
extension. But you have to pay on the 15th.
If you can. But even if you can't pay, you should still file your tax return. There's 2 types of penalties, right? There's a failure to file penalty, and then there's a failure to pay penalty. If I file on time and I owe the IRS, I'm going to get a failure to pay penalty, but I'm not going to get the failure to file penalty. Okay, so I'm cutting my penalties in half. And people don't understand this. Okay, so if I don't file my tax return, I'm going to pay both penalties. So it doesn't make any sense. Okay, so try to get your tax returns done on time. Take action, do something. It's the procrastination that really gets people in trouble. And they put their head in the sand, they bury their head in the sand, and they pretend there's not a problem. You'll still have a problem. You're still going to owe the IRS money, but you're cutting your problem down, and you're limiting how long your problem is going to last.
And you're following the law.
Well, you're following the law too. That's important, and I don't mean to discount that, because it is true that it's a law. The law says you have to file all your tax returns, and you can go to prison for 1 year for every year that you have filed.
We are a country
of
laws.
So I'm told, although I don't believe that's always the case, but so I'm told. But anyway, that's why. And so if I'm having financial issues, or I'm having tax problems, my first goal should be try to limit how long I can have that tax problem, right? And that's where we go back to the cascading tax problem. So I get a problem this year, and instead of starting the statute running now, and so I know I'm only going to have that problem for 10 years, I procrastinate, I let it go, and I'm not going to have the problem for 10 years, now I'm going to have it for 15 years. And so it's, again, when I tell people, I can guarantee that I can solve your problem, that you won't have any tax problems in 10 years if you follow my advice. People say, well, 10 years, that's a long time. It's true, but most people who come to see me have had tax problems
you just went over
more
that,
than 10 years.
And you just went over that earlier about, again, there are different statute of limitations, and here's what can happen, and it's 10 years, but there's things that can happen. So, again, this is such a great show because there's a lot of great information that people need to understand. So if you are just catching us right now, there's ways of getting in touch with Attorney Stephen Leahy and Opem Tax Advocates, 312-664-6649, or you can hear us now on Spotify. So it's as quick as clicking on to the episode and, just doing that.
Well, thanks, Jim. And again, the biggest mistake is not filing. So file your tax returns on time. If you need some help, we can help you. But again, there's so much free stuff out there, and we talked about that a couple of weeks ago, how many free systems are out there. Anyway, I hope that answered your question.
Thank you, Mr. Know-It-all.
That's right. Thank you, Mr. Know-It-all. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, if you have a question for Attorney Stephen Leahy from Opem Tax Advocates, you can give him a call at 312-664-6649. You can go to chicagotaxteam.com. You can go to Facebook, go to YouTube, go to Instagram. God, there's a lot of places to go. But go get some help. I think that's the biggest thing. Get some help and try to solve your cascading tax issue, because this is going to be a problem down the road for you that will cause nothing but problems. Address it now. Don't bring the family through the pain. Get it solved today.
Good advice, Jim.
All right. One more commercial break, but I'll be right back shortly here on AM560 the Answer.